preschool parents, my name is Allison and this is Ryan, and we're so glad to be with you guys today. This is part 1 of a 4-part series on how to talk to your kids about sex. And today we're leaning in to the first phase. How do you talk to your preschoolers?
And listen, in my opinion, this is the most important time to start talking about sex. Why? Because they're naked all the time.
That's true.
They're learning about their parts anyways, too. Their eyes, their ears, their nose. Why not add in a couple more, right?
It's as simple as that. And as we talk about this topic, I can't help but want to ask Ryan, what are some names that you used growing up? Because, I think of, some classics, you got pee-pee and wee-wee and hoo-ha or lady parts. What did you guys use?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Why does this make me cringe? Okay. We called it a tutu. I don't even know, which seemed okay at the time. But then I've got 2 older girls, and when they were getting ready for dance and I was putting on their tutus, it was a lot to handle. So I don't know. What did you guys call it?
I knew you were going to ask that question back to me. So I grew up with a sister. So we kind of knew what our parts were, no discussion there. We didn't really talk about it. But when it came to guys' parts, they were different. They just kind of stuck out and it was different. And so we didn't know what to call it. So we called it a stick out.
I don't even know what to think about that. I'm dying, Allison. But this is why we need to talk about these things so our kids aren't having the same conversation later about stick outs and tutus.
Oh, please. I'm so glad that we're talking about this. And you guys, I am sweating if we're super honest right now. But this is why we believe it's the most important phase to talk about sex. Not only because we got to get the awkward out of the way, but also because they're learning so much. And we're going to talk more about some of these reasons why. But we just want you to know that we're in this with you. You're leaning in. You're here listening to this video because you know that this matters. And we both have a preschooler. So we are literally right there with you.
Absolutely. And I have 2 older girls too. And I'm starting to realize that there's some things that I wish I would have done differently. So hey, it's never too late. I'm going to catch up with my bigs and I'm going to get in on the front end with my little.
Okay, so we're going to start with the why. Why is it important to talk to your preschooler about sex? And then we're going to jump in and give you 4 reasons or 4 specific things that you can talk about with your preschooler in this phase, things that you can actually talk about right now. So let's jump in with the why, other than wanting to avoid the conversation Ryan and I just had. So number 1 reason why is starting the conversation now prepares for the deeper conversations later. It acclimates this conversation for your kid. It normalizes it for them. And let's be honest, it normalizes it for you too, because it's weird. It's weird to say penis and vagina, and getting over that is important.
Gosh, why is it still hard for me to say the word penis? I don't know. It just is. I think it's because I have all girls. Now, vagina, I can say it left and right all the time. But in all seriousness, it's weird because it's been weird for decades. It's also weird because we all have our own history when it comes to sex, and not all of it are good memories.
You're so right, Ryan. Penis itself is not a bad word. Vagina itself is not a bad word. But often the associations that come with that, they can be bad memories. There can be traumatic experiences. Even the statistics lean into that. 1 in 5 women are raped in their lifetime. 1 in 10 men. And that doesn't even count, what else might happen to a child or an adult, as they go throughout their life and have these sexual experiences in dating or what their family talked about in their homes. All of our sexual experiences come with us when we talk to our kids about sex. And so starting early not only normalizes it for our kids, it normalizes it for us and allows us to go at a pace that we can process and we can handle. And it just helps everyone warm up and ease into this conversation.
Gosh, that's so true. It's so good because you're right. All of our sexual experiences come with us into this conversation. So whether you've had a traumatic experience or whether you're like me and your family really didn't even talk about it, it all comes with us. So, okay. Second reason, kids learn more from 0 to 5 years old than they do at any other age or stage. They're learning where their nose is. They're learning that they have 2 eyes and 2 feet and 10 fingers and toes. So, don't skip over the good stuff. There's more opportunities to talk about sex naturally in this phase than there is at any other phase because they are naked all the time. They're naked at bath time. They're naked when they're potty training. And at my house, we call our 2-year-old the naked scavenger because we find little bits of clothes all over our house.
That's awesome. They really are naked all the time.
All the time.
All
right?
the time, truly. Yeah. And also, there's just something about the preschool phase that just implies that things are meant to be learned over time. You see that in how they develop. They start out by rolling over, then they sit up, then they learn to crawl, then they learn to walk. Things happen over time. They were always meant to. And even past the early childhood preschool phase, they learn how to be social over time. They develop their brain over time. And so the conversation about sex, it's so important. We want that to develop over time too. That's why there's really no such thing as one sex talk. That's a myth. There's multiple opportunities to talk to our kids about sex along the way. So my mom had a sex talk with me when I was a preteen, and it was high level biology And then the next time we talked about it was the night before I got married, the night before my wedding.
I mean, better late than never.
She gave me a book on how to have sex and left the room. So that was the span of 20 years of conversations in my home. And listen, my mom did the best. Like, she was truly doing her best. Like, we all do our best as parents. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what she did, except for the fact that I was having conversations about sex, and that's 20 years, with friends and with the internet and other places and influences were talking with me about sex. And so as a parent, it's not a matter of if our kids are going to talk about sex over the years. It's a matter of if we're going to join and engage in that conversation. So that's why we believe starting now matters, doing it over time matters, because we were meant to learn things over time.
Hey, and if you're watching this, like, you're ahead of the game, in my opinion. So good stuff. Okay, lastly, in this phase, we want to be proactive and not reactive. We want to set that foundation. We want to keep the end in mind.
That's true. So keeping the end in mind means that you recognize there will come a time when you'll have a bigger conversation. And if you're ready for that, we have a video all about how to talk to your elementary schooler. But you recognize there's going to come this time. And by starting the conversation today, it prepares you, it prepares them that, hey, our family talks about this. Mm-hmm. Hey, like, our family's going to be one that talks about sex. And so as a parent, like, you can come to mommy, you can come to daddy to talk about these things. And so you're preparing for that now by having these conversations that you know are going to come later.
When I was teaching first grade, I had this little boy in my class, super sweet little boy. He's one of the teacher kids. You know all the teacher kids. But after school one day, he was in his mom's classroom and he Googled the word sex. He had heard the word, he didn't know what it meant, and he was curious. He wanted to know, so he Googled it. Well, all the alarms went off and all the firewalls, and everybody was notified of some inappropriate searching and all the things. And this poor little thing is probably still traumatized by that. But listen, it was an innocent moment that he was just curious. And it just goes to show that we were designed to be curious creatures. And all of our kids, they just want answers, and they want you to be the safe place that they can come and get those answers from, that you're the person that they can ask. But that's a tone only you can set. And that's exactly why we're talking about this now in this preschool phase, because when you talk about sex early and often, you set the tone that you are the safe place to talk about sex, not Google, not the internet, not some friends on the playground.
That's really good. And like the little boy in Ryan's example, he was curious. He did nothing wrong. Like, God created us to be curious creatures. That's what we do with that curiosity. It's how, as parents, we foster curiosity with our kids that matters, and fostering it in healthy spaces. And now maybe your kid has fostered some curiosity in some unhealthy spaces or unhealthy ways or things that you couldn't control. There's grace and there's redemption. In God's economy, there's always redemption. And that's why we believe that the end in mind, even past having a sex talk with our kids when they're, in the preteen years, gosh, past that, we want to raise our kids to have sexual integrity and not just sexual purity. Sexual purity is either you have it or you've lost it. And in that kind of mentality, that can be really hard for all of us as adults, as kids. But sexual integrity is something that can be grown. You can have 2 steps forward and 5 steps backwards and 5 steps forward. Sexual integrity is a skill set that can be grown. And of course, we want our kids to have as few sexual experiences as possible when they get married. But when our goal is sexual integrity over sexual purity, we set our kids up for success and for really tapping into who God made them to be and who He is, which is a God of grace and redemption.
I want that for my kids. I want that. It's awesome. So let's talk about what kids at this age can really handle and what is a realistic foundation to set. So here are the top 4 ways to talk about sex with your preschooler. 1, use the anatomically correct words. Biblically, sex is good. When we use the silly words and avoid talking about the parts that God gave us, we inadvertently teach them that there's something not good about those parts. Like tutu. I mean, I felt a little dirty holding the tutu, and it's not that the word was bad. I just assumed that the word was dirty because it was talked about a little differently and kind of in a secret way. But listen, all of God's parts are good.
That's good. That's good. And using those correct words, it just reinforces to your kids over time that this is something our family talks about. It normalizes it. And when you use those anatomically correct words, it removes a sense of secretness that could be built otherwise.
And I think it's a safety thing. I mean, you want your kids to be able to articulate if they encounter inappropriate touching. A kid using using words like penis and vagina, it's a sign to an offender that this household does talk about these things. And offenders want to create a safe and secretive shame headspace for kids. But this flips that. It also protects them if, God forbid, that something does happen. Penis and vagina hold up better in a court of law than, let's say, the word tutu does.
And that makes sense. But gosh, above all of that, and safety is so important, but above all of that, man, we want to teach our preschoolers that God made them and that God loves them, that every single part of them was made perfectly and beautifully by their Heavenly Father, and that God loves them. Every part of them is loved. And so when we just remove any stigma or any hesitancy to say the word penis or vagina, we're affirming that God made all of them. There is no part that is shameful to God. There's no part that is shameful to mommy and to daddy.
That's so good. And teaching them about privacy, I mean, it's as simple as that no one other than mom or dad can see, touch, or take pictures of their private parts. Look, there I said it. Like I said, penis and vagina. I'm getting better at this, right? But seriously, when we teach our kids that if any of that happens, we say no very loudly and we walk away and we tell mommy and daddy right away. It's important to assure them that, hey, this probably won't happen, but they need to know what to do if it does happen. And again, the goal here is to be proactive, not reactive. A practical example that we have in our family, we have a male pediatrician. So on our way to our well visits, we always talk about the things he's going to do. And of course, they always ask if there's going to be a shot or whatever. And then after that, we talk about how he's going to check your eyes and check your ears and your nose. And he's going to check your vagina too. And I always make sure that I comment that, hey, it's only okay for him to look at your vagina because mommy is right there with you. It's never okay for somebody to look at your vagina without mommy there. And now that I have big girls in the car too, lately I've been adding, hey, listen, but even mommy doesn't just look at your vagina whenever I want to, right? And they're like, yeah, right. I only look if you ask me to, if there's something bothering you there and we need to check it out or chat about it. But I think it's important to reinforce that they need to have control over their body. And speaking of privacy, not only for your kid, but for others, we live in this technology era. Like now is the time to start putting those internet filters on your devices. We have Apple products, but I'm sure Android is the same. Like it's just a setting. It's a restriction setting where you get to pick and choose what your kids can see. So that's super important to start doing that now.
I have a 3-year-old and I have not done that, so thank you for that, Ryan. And so continuing our 4 things you can talk to preschoolers about sex, and that first one was using anatomically correct words. Second one was starting to talk about privacy, and the third is talking about reproduction. Now, before you freak out on me, I'm not talking about intercourse with your preschooler. That's too far. If you're wondering where the line is, that's where it is. But I am talking about, man, God made our bodies to reproduce, that every living thing was made to reproduce. Like, how creative is God? How cool is that he did that? And so we can start building that foundation now. Say you're cutting open a pepper. Brecken loves to help in the kitchen right now. And so you're cutting open a pepper and you see the seeds in there. You can remind him every living thing was made to reproduce. How cool is that? Like, that's how mommy has a baby. I'm a living thing. Fruit, they have seeds inside them. That's how they reproduce. And so you can just kind of start that general conversation about that. It creates a healthy view of body parts and of reproduction. And kids love nature at this age. Oh, yeah. So it can be like as simple as like the caterpillar turning into a butterfly, or the little baby birds that end up hatching into little birds. I don't know about you, but we're always outside. So start talking about reproduction at a very high level.
Well, and you had mentioned that the other day, and we had some pumpkin seeds, and Emmy went out and planted the pumpkin seeds. And because I just thought, little conversation, we were able to talk about it. It was just so easy. I think that's the point. It's not this one big talk. It's weaving it into our conversations in everyday life. So listen, if your preschool asks where babies come from, that is not them asking for the full sex talk, right?
That's right.
Right. So we want to give them simple answers to simple questions. Okay, Allison, let's practice. Are you ready? All right. Where do babies come from?
Oh, babies come from mommy's tummy. They grow in there until it's time to be born.
But like where?
Well, in a place called a womb. It's right next to mommy's tummy.
So, like, how does it get out?
Well, God was super creative, and so whenever it's time for baby to come out, your muscles start squeezing together, and the baby comes out of a mommy's vagina.
Okay, so see, very teachable moments. And listen, this is that phase where there's birth stories either of themselves or their siblings. These are great teachable moments to lean into. And listen, if you need some help, there's a great book that we can recommend about how to talk to your preschooler about sex. It's called The Story of Me, and it's designed for ages 3 to 5.
Yeah, it's part of a 4-part series too. So they're like, you can read them along the way. It kind of prompts you to learn what you can be talking about in the different phases. So those were our 4 tips on what to talk to preschoolers about. Talk about the anatomically correct words, talk about privacy, reproduction, and give simple answers to simple questions. They're not always asking as big of a question as you may think. Well, we've laughed a lot. I've sweated a lot. We hope that these tips were helpful for you. And you are doing a great job. You're leaning in. You're reinforcing that later you're going to get to be the safe place to process these big life conversations that come about when you have a middle schooler and a high schooler. You're enforcing that their body is good, that sex is good, and that God is creative and redemptive. So thank you for leaning in. We're glad that you are, and I want to lean in with you.
Oh gosh, me too. You're laying the foundation to talk about one of the biggest topics that all parents dread, me included, and you are getting ahead. So look, we're getting ahead. This is amazing. You're doing a great job, and you're doing better than you give yourselves credit for, and we're in this together. So from this day on, I think we should retire the word stick out and tutu. Deal?
Deal. Thanks for joining us, you guys. Don't forget, this is one of a 4-part series, so you can check out the other parts of elementary, middle, and high school on our YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us. Bye, guys.
Bye.